Hello and welcome to yet another HQuest Builder quick tutorial. This will introduce you to how the new Homebrew expansions work, basically. I've had a number of requests over the last couple of years to make it so that the Homebrew features are a little bit more involved and a little bit more flexible within HQuest Builder. Obviously, at the moment, the only facility you have is to upload a single tile with a fixed kind of background image or a fixed image within that kind of tile square, effectively for monsters and for traps. What this enhancement introduces is the ability to create larger homebrew tiles and also to be able to rotate them. So without further ado, this is how you do it. Everything you need is all within the homebrew area as it was previously. If you click the little plus icon here, previously there was a modal which just allowed you to enter a URL and that was it. You'll notice this is a little bit more involved. What you have is the ability to do exactly what you did before. So if you want to, you can just link to an image that you would like to add as a homebrew element. Just to be clear, I get a lot of questions about why I don't allow people to upload on HQuest Builder. To be completely honest, it's because of storage space. I don't know how large your images are going to be, and it would probably cost a huge amount of money potentially to host the images. Whereas if you put them on a free service like Imager and then get the direct link to it, I can show you that quickly now if you want, because I'm aware Imager have actually changed their process a little bit. So if I go to the page for Imager, unfortunately, if you try and copy the link, it will take you to this page. It won't actually take you to the image. The easiest thing to do is to right click here and say copy image address, or you can open the image in a new tab and copy from there. So just to be clear, you can still upload things and link to them from Imager. They've just made it a little bit more fiddly for some reason for you to link through to it. But yeah, that's the main reason I don't allow uploading, just because I'd have to handle the optimization. Imager is free and it does all that stuff for me. And also it means that you can share your images with other people as well, whereas if you just uploaded them, they would either be on your machine or they'd be in your account somewhere, which would make it a little bit less accessible for people. But I'm waffling quite a bit, so let's move on very quickly. So as you did before, you can just put a URL to your image, and if you just want a graphic which is non-rotating by one tile, you just say create tile, and you have exactly the same experience that you did before. So you can just keep clicking this, and it will kind of add that particular homebrew icon. If you wanted it so that you could rotate that icon, you add your link here, and you select this option a little bit further down. This introduces some new features on here. So let's start with something quite simple. So you just want something which is a width of 1, height of 1. I'll come to the background element in a second, but basically if you just wanted exactly the same but a rotatable version of it, you just do that, and then we can click on him and keep rotating him, and he basically does what we expect him to do, which is good. If we want to go a bit larger, so say we wanted a room tile that occupied this whole space here, what we would do is grab the link to that particular asset. Thank you whoever supplied this. I didn't create that. I just found it on a board somewhere, but this is just for examples. So please do credit people if you do use their artwork, by the way. Don't just grab everyone's artwork from the web and start using it. A lot of effort and time goes into the artworking behind these things. So what I'm using here is purely for demonstration purposes. I'm not claiming to have created them, and I'm not going to host anything which has these without attribution. So 8 by 8. So the way this is set up is you have to define it width first, and the width always has to be more than the height. Sounds confusing. It's basically, otherwise it would create a huge amount of permutations for the number of tiles I would have to kind of handle in the background, whereas this halves it. It does mean if you want something that's tall and thin, what you actually do is you make it long and not so tall, and then when you rotate it, it will become the orientation that you need, which hopefully makes sense. But let's make an 8 by 8 tile with this background image. So if we do that, say create tile, the anchor points for rotating tiles, if it's just 1 by 1, obviously it's just the square that you've clicked on. If you have something which is larger, it always goes from the lower left and then kind of across and up. So if we click here, there's our homebrew background image. Look at that. Well, technically it's a background image. There is a different setting for background images. So if you want things to go completely over the top of what you're doing, this should work. You can put furniture and everything over the top of it. But if you wanted to put Homebrew on Homebrew, the easiest thing to do is to say, for example, let's do something a bit more dramatic. Let's make it so we can actually add a complete new background to our board. Again, not claiming that I've built this at all. It's just an example image. But that's a nice graphic that we might want to occupy the whole background to our board. So let's put that in there. Select that we want it to be the maximum width and the maximum height. So if you see here, it will allow us to go right up to 19. But if you start moving this down, can you see that this number's going down? So it's designed so hopefully you can't break it. It's designed so that it should basically make it so you can always do a valid sizing for your particular cell. So let's make this a background tile, create the tile, it will drop it in there. And if I click it, look at that, it occupies the whole background. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. There's kind of 3 different types, basically. You've got your background images, which are designed to sit underneath everything. You can't really have 2 of these on a board. So if you did a whole board like this and then tried to put another background image, it wouldn't work because they would be at the same level. But you can cheat it by using another layer, which is not set as a background image. Yes, the critical thing I do need to explain is that these are sized slightly differently. So if it's a background image, what it will try and do, well, what it will do is use something called cover. So whatever image you define, it will not stretch the image, but it will basically fill the whole of that space that you've defined with the image, whether it's the aspect ratio or not. Whereas the other sizing, if you don't set it as a background image, it effectively makes the image centrally aligned and it will fill the width or the height of that image, but it won't kind of cut off any of it. To show this a little bit more clearly, let's use our good friend Mr. Skeleton again. And I'm going to make it so that he's going to be, let's make him about the size of a table. No, let's make him 6 pixels wide and say 2 pixels tall. So what I would expect to see is that even though let me just create it so I can show you. So if I put him here and replace the background image, you can't put 2 Homebrew images on the same tile. It's the same rules that we have for some of the other background images. It's a little bit hard to see what's actually happening here, but I can hack into the code quickly just to show you what it's done. So if I save this and it reloads, can you see what it's done is it has created the tile that's the size that I specified, but what it's done is it's centrally aligned it and it's made it so it fits the height. In the same way, I think that's pretty much what it will always do, to be fair. You can still rotate it. It's quite nice because what you can actually do is actually have a tile that kind of bridges across tiles if you want to and have gaps either sides if you designed your assets to the right size. If I then set that same graphic, and what was it? I can't remember how wide he was now. Is it 6 or is it 8? Let's say 6 by 2. And I set him as a background tile. Was it 6? Oh, it was 6 by 2. So if I do this now, what should happen, he says confidently, is that the skull will fill the whole of that width. Can you see? So there's a slight difference. Background images, what it's trying to do is always fill that whole space for you. Whereas if it's not set as a background, then it will basically make the asset kind of centrally align and fit within that space. Basically means if you want to do furniture and stuff like that, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to do it within this particular type. Whereas this is more for kind of backgrounds for kind of areas for other assets to sit on top of, basically, and it's just making sure it doesn't crop off. I'm sure you can make it so that your assets will all fit regardless of which choice you make. I just thought it gave a little bit more flexibility and hopefully made it a little bit more obvious what it was doing. But I've waffled quite a lot. Hopefully I've made sense. I'm very, very pleased with this update because it's taken a while to do. It's actually involved an awful lot of rewriting of quite a lot of the code underneath the hood, just to make it so it's a little bit more streamlined for how all the other assets sit around all of this. So I'm quite keen for people to test this. If you're reading this as a tutorial of how to use it, then hopefully everything went well and I didn't have to change anything. But as always, I'm curious to hear your feedback. Definitely get in touch if you've got any comments, but hopefully this will allow people to do some even more interesting things with their maps for quests. Probably more, to be honest, to make it so that the Zargon player can look at something a little bit more interesting than just the standard assets. but it hopefully opens up the door to some really interesting homebrew experiments that you can do within the Hero Quest board. But yeah, happy quest building, everyone, and hopefully I will have an update very soon. Take care for now. Goodbye.